Hey guys, this is Rodeska, and I'm coming to you with a tutorial today for adding patches to your character topology flow, and how I visually see topology flow when I'm doing retopology. So you guys have seen a lot of videos of mine going over retopology and some tutorials about retopology, but I've never actually shown you my thought process behind topology and why I do it a certain way. So with that being said, let's get started and we can show you all of the process behind it. So basically what patches are these, like, as you can see right here, we have like the color information or the polygroups on the character, and these are basically patches that I've set up for deformation and topology flow, and also UV seams for the character. And basically what that's going to do is it's going to allow us to kind of visually see how the topology is set up. A lot of these patches are different colored, so you can kind of like visually easily see like the process behind what I do. So sometimes I'll like, the first thing I always like try to get right is the deformation areas. I try to keep those, however the animal is going to deform, I try to keep that flowing nicely. So as you can see right here, like we have all of these deformation patches, color coded, and this is just to visually see it. This isn't going to be a part of it or anything like that. This is just so you can visually see how I do it. So you can see, like in the front we have a patch, we have the midsection that's a patch, we have all of the deformation in the cheek area that's a patch, the deformation in the lip area that's a patch. In the lip areas, they're all different, and you have the midsection. It's also a patch, this big long patch right here. So you can see that the midsection is actually, it could be made up of 3 because of all of the 5-point stars on each patch. But there's a patch in the back, there's a patch on the side, and then there's a patch on the front. And then there is obviously all of these other little patches that are made up of the 5-point stars. So the 5-point stars are these little things right here where all of these edges come into a single point, and this basically redirects the topology in different directions so that you have all of these different deformation areas, and it changes up the topology flow for you. So if you're feeling stuck in how to retopologize something, you can always try to redirect the topology using 5 stars, and get better patches. Some of these patches could have been extended a little bit more to make it a little bit more readable, but again, it's just something that's it's just something that's visually on there it's going to be thrown out in the end, because you don't really need these patches. They're just to show the audience like what I see in my head. So we have like loops around the eyes, we have loops around the lips, we have ones for the brow, and this is all like, I prematurely thought of this before I started to retopologize. One of the reasons why I do that is because it just makes it so much simpler to just go in immediately and start retopologizing it. So you can see we can deform the ears. We can deform those pretty nicely just by wiggling those a little bit. And it's all being supported by all of those edge loops that I set up with the patches. You can see all of the deformation areas that I have patches to. I try to keep the topology as close to a human as I possibly could to make it more readable, but amazingly enough, I actually retopologize this character a lot faster than I actually retopologize the female character. So that was very interesting. It only took me 2 hours to retopologize this character. For a female, it takes me usually 5 hours to retopologize it, but this one was a lot easier for some reason. I think it's just because it was easier to figure out the patches and get that started right away. So I'm gonna actually make a time-lapse video, or show you a time-lapse video of the process of how I get this set up, so that it's more easily to understand in the other software. And we'll be going over Blender on how to bring your vertex color information into Blender. So what I do is I set this up using vertex colors, using Polypaint, and then what I do is I go into a retopology software and retopologize over the patches that I've painted in to help me. For the most part, all of these kind of like held up pretty well in terms of like where I was going to put the patches. But a lot of them actually changed in the end because I got a little bit confused while I was painting on where I should go next with some of them. But it's okay because in the end it actually worked out pretty well. So we're going to be using polypaint information, and some programs they allow you to import the polypaint information from ZBrush into them so that they will allow you to kind of visually see it. So GoB is a really good thing to have for Blender. If you're a Blender user, you can use GoB or GoZ, and that will cover bring over your polypaint information from ZBrush into Blender so that you can actually retopo over your character using the polypaint. So again, polypaint in your patches and then bring it into Blender to retopologize over those patches that you made. You can also just draw a wireframe if it helps you. You can draw a wireframe and then just kind of like put the vertices in the wireframe that you drew, and it should help you. So we're going to hit Shift A inside of the shading. First, we're going to create a new material. Hit Shift A inside of the shading, go to Input, and then go to Vertex Color and then Color. And that's going to allow you to add your polypaint information into Blender so that you can then start retopologizing over your high poly mesh. Okay. Again, it just makes it a lot easier to paint that information. You could probably just paint it right inside of Blender itself, but I think it's a little bit easier to paint it inside of ZBrush than it is to paint it inside of Blender. So again, that's Shift A, go up to Vertex Color and then Color to add your polypaint information to your material. Okay, so we're going to be going over and taking a look at the speed lapse video and going over my process for what I did in that. So thank you guys, and we'll see you there. Okay, so now we're back inside of ZBrush, and this will be the time-lapse video of me painting in the patches so that you guys can kind of get an idea as to what I'm thinking about when I'm painting my patches, so that I can retopologize over them. So immediately there's some pretty good stuff in here. You know, we got these arms that are singled out, and this arm right here doesn't really matter because I ended up modeling the arm. But if you wanted to go in and you wanted to create patches for this arm, you could definitely do that, but you can see that all I'm doing is I'm using polypaint to kind of like create these polygroups that are going to essentially be the patches that I work on. So we're just going to go in there and we're just going to figure all of this stuff out. And you can see I'm creating the tail. It's going to be easy, and now as you can see I'm creating the patches for the arms. So that I can, you know, get a nice deformation area around the arms. Also around the neck area. This area didn't really matter too much, but it needed to be in there just, again, to visually help me to kind of see what I needed to do. Okay, so you can see this is a pretty easy process, right? It's pretty straightforward process. You just go in there and you kind of create polygroups, and you make sure that these polygroups kind of hold up, so that you aren't having too much of a hard time retopologizing. And we're going to be retopologizing a little bit of this, and then the rest of the video is going to be a time lapse. But as you can see right here, I am creating more patches in the front and in the back, kind of like a little vest. And that'll be that'll be the patch for the chest and the torso, upper torso area where the chest area is. And then right here, we're just kind of trying to go in there and make sure that these are perfect. Again, because it really does matter when you're inside of TopoGun, and it just helps you be less confused as to what you're going to do. Okay. Arms are pretty straightforward. Just make sure you get those deformation areas in there. And the face is a little bit more tough because you have a lot of surface change. But again, it's pretty straightforward when it comes to this stuff, because, you know, you want to animate the mouth or you want to animate the eyes. It's pretty straightforward. Got to make sure you have loops around the mouth and the eyes. And anything else that is going to be deforming in a kind of like radial kind of like way, it needs to have deformation loops to support that animation or that posing or whatever you're going to do to it. So we're just creating the nose and the mouth patches, going in there very fast, very, very quickly, creating those patches. And then I go in there. And again, a lot of these didn't kind of like make it in the end. I just kind of like, I winged a lot of this. So we're going over the ears to make that. We're adding the loops for the ears in the back and the front. And I think that just about, and then I go down there and I go to the poly paint from poly groups. That creates all of the painting information. And then I'm going in here and I'm just kind of refining that with painting on it directly so that I don't have to do another kind of like group job. And then we're going in there and we're just creating the chest deformation stuff. Trying to find anything that we missed. Oh, I did miss his feet. Even though the feet were relatively an easy thing to do, it still kind of helps visually to put polypaint information in there to see which way you're going and how you're going to go about it. Okay, now we're inside of TopoGun and we're going to bring in our model. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I actually did have to go back into ZBrush again to polypaint a little bit more of the information, but I think that was during the stream and not during this process. But it's okay because it didn't deviate too far. It was just the arm, the mechanical arm, that I had to get rid of to be able to model. Okay, as you can see, it's a pretty straightforward process. You know, you poly paint in these things and then you just follow the poly paint as you're going along. You can see a lot of this is like a lot of directional change. So right there where the eye meets the mouth topology, you can see that I made a 5-point, and that's essentially what you're going to be doing. You're going to be thinking, oh, well, how can I redirect this but still kind of keep it, make it make sense? And you're going to say, well, I need a 5-star in there so that I can redirect this in a certain way. There's multiple ways you can redirect the topology. Try to make it to where it makes sense and that it can animate and that you can hide seams and all kinds of jazz if you're doing game characters. But as you can see, I branched off of that and I ended up bringing that straight forward to make a little bit more sense, to add that patch on the nose. And of course, save your work. It's important. And you can see right there I added a triangle, but then I was like, no, I don't want to do that. I just don't like the way triangles subdivide inside of sculpting programs. All right, so now I'm just kind of creating the volume for the brow, so that when he does facial expressions, it'll kind of build up that volume. And that'll be another patch inside of that area that we will try to connect. As you can see, these 5-point stars are relatively easy to figure out once you start stretching out the geometry, and you'll notice that once you start stretching it out, you'll be given this option: oh, do I want to continue this way or do I want to continue the other way? And that's just something that is fun about retopology, is that you kind of have to figure it out, like what way do I want to go? You can also cut through the mesh. Don't be shy to cut through the mesh to add a little bit more geo so that you can connect everything. I often do that, and I also make sure that everything is nice and even. Don't keep it all bunched up because then it looks very terrible. So try to keep it nice and even, try to keep it nice and straight. This is where your OCD is really going to kick in and say, hey, I need to keep this all nice and straight, nice and even. As you can see, a lot of these are bunching up, but we did get rid of a lot of those loops later on. You'll notice that I created a triangle there, but I ended up correcting that a little bit later on. You see the bottom of the mouth where the chin meets the lips. You can see that that patch actually didn't hold up in the end. Why? Because a lot of these don't really do it. It's just something that's there to kind of visually help you in the direction that you're going. And as you can see, we ended up correcting that that little problem, and I'm sitting here and I'm thinking to myself, how can I get rid of this, because I don't really want all this topo. So I ended up just grabbing the geo from the cheek and then just kind of extending that, and then saving myself a triangle and also a lot of bunched up geo in that area. Those are also decisions that you need to make. Do you want to use triangles? It's perfectly fine if you do or don't. It all depends on what you want to do. I just try to have a nice clean model for people to use easily without any errors. I probably should have finished that sentence a little bit quicker, but I try to keep my models clean so that people can use them easily and not have to fiddle around with a lot of triangles. Okay, so right here we're just doing the mouth. Relatively easy, just keeping the loops around the mouth, making sure everything is nice and tidy, nice and clean, bringing the mouth up for the mouth cavity. We do have a mouth bag for this character, but again, I made it on stream. I did not make it in this video, so if you want to watch that VOD, you're more than welcome to. I don't limit my VODs to subscribers. I let everybody see my mistakes and all of my fuck ups and everything like that. So you're more than welcome to go and watch the VODs and everything like that. Okay, so we're going to be doing a little bit more of this just so that it kind of hammers home of what I do. Again, kind of making sure that these vertices are in the right direction, flowing in the right way, something that makes sense, something that looks like it'll read pretty well. And just keeping everything nice and tidy. Okay. You have a little opening right there that's going to be causing, it's going to be a little bit easier to model when you get into other software so that you're not bogged down with trying to get in there and grab those edges. I like to leave it a little bit open so that you can grab those edges and start modeling right away the mouth cavity. Now, for the record, I don't know what a ferret, inside of a ferret's mouth looks like. Never seen it. I actually owned a ferret, but I never really just like checked inside of his mouth ever. All right, now we're making these very, very large polygons. This is another way that'll help you kind of like visually see what you're doing, is if you make these really large polygons. You can see that my polygons for even just the mid-sized ones are pretty good in size. So make sure that you're making large polygons at first and then subdividing whenever you want to keep that silhouette. It just helps you, again, visually see what you're doing and what you need to change and where you need to go. Especially when it comes to something like a neck or whatever, just make large polygons and then subdivide it. Don't make yourself do all of this work. That's needless, you know. Minimize your work. And you can see right there, I redirected it. That's because I want to create a loop going around the arm for deformation purposes. And that loop is going to support a lot of the deformation that's going to be happening in that arm area, because it is a ferret. It has a lot of like merged skin in that area, so it's going to be something that you need to kind of like make sure that it deforms well. Okay, just kind of redirecting all of this stuff. Is again, made another 5-point star going straight down, but also redirected the topology to go underneath the arm. I do save the arm for on stream again, because things like that are a little bit frustrating to perfect. So sometimes streaming helps me stay focused with what I need to do, and I also get help from the chat as well. If I see something that, you know, that they don't see, or excuse me, that I don't see, and they see it, then I can easily, you know, go in there and fix it, because they suggest something, and I usually tend to always like my chat's suggestions. Now we're just making loops around the tail, and then those are going to be kind of going off and cutting through the leg area. I try to keep all of my open loops, I try to keep them all even so that they're just easier to connect. And then we're just making the loops. So essentially this is all you do, is you just go, you make the loops, you branch them off, you create patches, and then you just kind of connect those patches in between everything, making sure that all the deformation areas are the most important. Okay, so I think that is about it. I do a little bit more, but again, I just wanted to kind of hammer home what I do in my topology process. I really hope that this helps you guys creating your topology and kind of seeing the process in which I do it. I do this way in modeling, box modeling as well. My siren girl that I made was completely all box modeled inside of Blender. This is how I think about box modeling too. How am I going to make it to where it will be able to be bent if I need to pose it or whatever? So that's the same way that I think of that. Box modeling has really helped me kind of understand how I need to make my topology look good. Simply because box modeling, you need to do a lot of stuff in order to make your stuff look good. Okay. So yeah, this has been Rodeska, and this has been my shitty video of helping you guys with the process of how I do my topology. So hopefully, again, it has helped you guys out. Please leave a like and a follow. If you guys like the content, let me know. I will be taking a much needed vacation after a lot of work that has come my way. So I will be back in 2020. I know that's a really long time to take a break, but I have some things that I just want to correct, okay, before I come back. So I'm just kind of taking a break, trying to get my health in order, trying to get everything else in order, and I will see you guys after the holidays. So thank you guys so much for sticking with me for this long, and thank you guys so much for reaching 10K subscribers. It's been awesome. It's been an awesome journey. Thank you guys so much for all the support, and make sure you look at my ArtStation for some freebies to say thank you to everybody for all the support and the love. All right, so take care, you guys. Bye.